It all had started a few years before the space race began between the two rival nations, the USA and Soviets. The world was stunned by the daily UFO sightings, and stories of alien contact flushed newspapers. It was the era of two types of people. The first one was groups of like-minded people, for example, engineers, scientists, and inventors who dismissed any alien contact and flying saucer stories, while the second ones were the contactees who also claimed to have been in the UFOs. These groups never aligned with each other, but Wilbert Brockhouse Smith, a Canadian engineer, was the only line of connection between these two groups. Mr. Smith worked as a senior radio engineer for the Canadian government's Department of Transport in the late 1940s and 50s. He was the reason behind the radio communication between Canada and the United States at that time. Very few people know that Mr. Smith convinced the Canadian government to establish a program to monitor the UFOs that eventually detects the strange aerial phenomenon which, according to him, was not earthly. While asking Americans about the existence of UFOs, he received a reply from them that the US government had put this subject at their uppermost concern, and it was even more top secret than the atomic bomb. Besides, according to researcher Grant Cameron, Mr. Smith played a major role in establishing Radio Ottawa used by Canadian spies, and also for tracking secret Soviet communications. In 1950, the Canadian UFO study program, Project Magnet, was established by Transport Canada under the supervision of Mr. Smith. The government funded the project for 4 years, but he received informal funding after. In 1952, he set up an observatory at Shirley's Bay to study the findings of UFO sightings under Project Magnet. He had a personal interest in geomagnetism, which made him conclude that the UFOs were of extraterrestrial origin, propelled by magnetic forces, and actually from parallel universes. Mr. Smith said, "It is my opinion that the people from elsewhere choose all sorts of methods to make contact with us, and their technology and understanding being much better than ours, they can use methods which we find quite incomprehensible." Interestingly, he believed that the UFOs were controlled through physic powers, and such statements embarrassed the Department of Transport. In 1952, when the great UFO wave hit the media, Mr. Smith claimed that the United States Air Force shot down a UFO near Washington, D.C., recovered its piece, and let him borrow it. When asked if he had returned the piece to the USAF, he replied that it went to a much more highly secret group, which identity he could not disclose. Surprisingly, Mr. Smith was also a firm believer in aliens. In 1961, he gave a speech at the Vancouver Area UFO Club, where he claimed to have been in contact with aliens, referring to them as the boys topside. Furthermore, he said that the aliens had explained to him that the speed of light is not constant, and time works differently in the universe, not chronological ticking that people can imagine on Earth, but a field function that changed throughout the universe, and which could be altered. Their ships, as he was told, were supported on the Earth's gravitational field. The fields surrounding their ships, he added, created areas that reduced areas that weakened the strength of objects that came into contact with them, accounting for the destruction of earthly military craft that flew too close to them. This explained, among other phenomena, the May 1956 crash of a military jet into the Villa St. Louis convent in Orleans. The jet, Smith said, flew into a very strong vortex of reduced binding, causing it to break apart. When nuclear explosions happened, he added, similar unstable vortices were formed. His unnamed friend, who had also been in communication with these people from outside, claimed to have spoken with one of them, Tyla, a garbage collector whose duty was to clean up the radioactive messes left by such man-made explosions. Tyla, according to Smith, grabbed the stuff, transported it on board his ship, rendered it inactive, and then dumped it in a remote location on Earth. Tyla reportedly told a friend in 1948 that he would dump his next load near Ottawa at an appropriate moment so that many people could observe it. On November 21, 1950, Mr. Smith wrote a memo that was classified as top secret, but later it was recovered from the archives of the University of Ottawa. According to the memo, the Canadian government was serious about UFOs and had been building a secret technology using oceanic radiation, atmospheric radioactivity, and geomagnetism. He further wrote that his work in geomagnetic and the energy on which flying saucers operate was connected. By summarizing sightings reported in 1952, Mr. Smith reported that UFOs were 100 feet or more in diameter. They can travel at speeds of several thousand miles per hour. They can reach altitudes well above those which should support conventional aircraft or balloons, and ample power and force seem to be available for all required maneuvers. Project Magnet was discontinued just a few days afterward. Ottawa Journal reported that scientists insist, "There is no proof flying saucers exist, but they honorably admit there is no proof that all the strange and wandering objects reported in the sky are freaks of imagination or atmosphere." Before his death from cancer, Mr. Smith had asked his wife to hide all his research and sensitive files, as he was afraid that they would get into the wrong hands. "They will be coming to ransack all my work," Smith proclaimed. He died on December 27, 1962, and as he predicted soon after that, the Soviets, Americans, and Canadians approached his wife.